Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin Dean and I'm the author of The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, and I'm so excited to be with you guys today. I'm going to be with you for the next hour or so. We're going to talk a little bit about me and my life as an author, a little bit about my book, The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, and then I'm going to get you guys to do an interactive activity. So hopefully you've got your imaginations and your creativity whirring. I can't wait to see what ideas you come up with, and we'll even have time for some questions at the end. But first of all, I'm going to introduce you to me properly. So as I said, my name is Benjamin Dean. You can call me Ben. Benjamin's what my mum tends to call me when I'm in trouble. So I always think, oh no, what have I done wrong when someone calls me Benjamin? I've got some pictures on the screen here, which hopefully you should be able to see in your classroom. They're usually me with a lot of books around me. That's usually where you can find me. There's usually a lot of books all around me wherever I am. So in these pictures here, you can see in the very first one over there, I've got a lot of copies of The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. Now, something you might not know about being an author is that when you publish a book, your publisher sends you a really big box. And in that box, there's usually about 20 or 25 copies of your own book, as if you haven't already read it a million times already. So I'm always like, what are you meant to do with 25 versions of the same book? So what I tend to do is I tend to set them all up on my bookshelf and take a lovely picture with them so everyone can see that I've got a new book out. I can post that on Instagram, and then I start building little shapes, try and play like a little game of Jenga with my books and see how high I can build it before it topples down again. I just really enjoy getting all those books out and kind of piling them all up next to me and seeing how tall I can get them. Sometimes I can get them nearly as high as me, but I am quite tall, so that's quite difficult to do. But as you can see there, I've got my bookshelf. I've got some awards down there as well. One of them is this bad boy right here. It's a big gold one, which actually isn't for writing books. I'm really into playing tennis. I love playing tennis. It's one thing that I do all the time. And this award here, which is, you might recognize it, it's a replica of the World Cup, which is football, not tennis. But I won a tournament in tennis and they gave me a replica of the World Cup. Not entirely sure why, but it takes pride of place on my bookshelf. Usually you can see it just there. And you can see a bunch of all my other books there as well. In the middle there, you've got me in a bookshop. Bookshops are some of my favourite places to be in the whole world, to be surrounded by books of all kinds, books that you can dive into. You can go on as many adventures as you like. I just love to be in a bookshop. And then that far picture there, when I go into a bookshop, one of the things I really love to do is to sign books. It's my favourite thing to do. I spent ages thinking about what my author signature was going to be. So I've signed plenty of books. I think in my career I've signed thousands of books. And it's so much fun. So you can see me there. I think I'm in Edinburgh in that picture, sitting at the table in one of the bookshops, signing a bunch of my books. It is a lot of fun. So a little bit about me, some of the things I'm really interested in apart from tennis. I really love playing video games. I'm a big video game player. I used to play Fortnite a lot. I've kind of stopped playing that a little bit now, but that's one of my favorite games to play, and I always find that you get some really good inspiration when you're playing video games or you're doing something else like watching a movie or going for a walk or meeting your friends. And I really love snacks as well. Snacks are something that I really need around me at all times when I'm writing. You know, you need some good biscuits, maybe some good chocolate. This morning for breakfast, I had a pan au raisin, which is a very nice pastry that I had on the tube to get me here. So I'm feeling full of energy now. So that was me now. But how about I introduce you to me when I was maybe more your age, maybe a little bit younger than some of you watching. That very first picture there, I am very young. I'm not sure if many of you will recognize the car. I'm looking at the teachers through the camera, hoping they all recognize this car, very famous in the 90s. But that used to be my favorite little car when I was a baby. And the other person in that picture is my mum. Now, my mum is someone who I dedicate all of my books to. So if you ever open up one of my books, usually on the first page, there's the dedication. And in there, it will usually say, for mum. And then I'll maybe add some friends in there as well. I usually feel like I get good brownie points for saying that something's for my mum, because my sister is not an author, so she can't do this. So I get like special brownie points for being able to dedicate all my books to my mum. And she's very proud of me, so I'm very happy with that. The middle picture there, I'm looking very happy. I'm standing next to my cousin Mia, but something you maybe can't tell from this picture is that I was actually in a really bad mood. If you look really closely at that picture, you can see that my cousin has all these lovely butterfly clips in her hair. She'd just been bought loads of them, and I really wanted some as well, but you might not be able to tell from the pictures or right now because I've got the cap on, but I don't really have much hair, so there's not really much for the butterfly clips to cling to. But I was really mad that I didn't get any, but I managed to put a smile on my face for the picture, so that's what matters the most. And then the furthest picture along is me looking a little bit shifty. I'm looking a little bit suspicious. This is me on the first day of, I think it's the first day of year 2. And I've put this picture in because it's the very first time that I remember loving books, and specifically loving writing books. It was in year 2 when I wrote my very first story. It was a retelling of The Three Little Pigs. It wasn't very original. I kind of just rewrote the story, but it gave me a taste for writing stories of my own. And now I'm very lucky that I'm an author. I've got some of my books on the table here. I'm not sure if you can see behind me over here. There's some books here. Some of them I wrote, not all of them. Some of them are books by some good friends. But yeah, this is around about the first time that I wanted to be an author. Now, before I wanted to be an author, there were some other things I wanted to be as well. I used to want to be an Olympic gymnast. I don't know why. I really wanted to be able to do a backflip or a front flip. I've never been able to do either, but I used to want to be able to do them. And I also used to want to be a chef. I can't cook, so I'm not entirely sure why I wanted to be a chef. And then I finally landed on wanting to be an author because I realized that that was how I could tell stories, and that was something that I really, really loved to do. So why I love books and why I think you should love books too. I'm sure there are many of you watching now that absolutely love to dive into a good book, dive into a good adventure. You can see me there. I'm in a bookshop. I've got a pile of my own books. I'm giving them a really big hug because I just love them so much. And they are almost as tall as me. They're kind of resting on the counter, so they've got a bit of an advantage, but it's nice to be able to build your books up that tall. But why I love books is an ability to be able to escape into a brand new world, worlds that you would never get to go to otherwise. Maybe you're going into a really fantastical world, a magical world, one where there's special powers. That's always really, really fun to be able to kind of get the magical side of things. You know, we'll talk a little bit about The Boy Who Fell from the Sky in a moment, but there's some fun aspects in that we don't really have in the real world. Or you can go to a world that's kind of similar to the one we live in, but it's maybe different from where we live. So it might be in a different country, a different city. You might be able to meet different characters who can kind of become almost like friends to you when you're reading. All of my characters who I write, there's Archie in Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, and there's Zed in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. I always want them to feel a little bit like they're your friend. They're leading you through the story, they're holding your hand as you get through it all, and you're going to go through this adventure together. Talking of adventures, you can live countless adventures in books, and you get to experience things that you might not otherwise. So I never got to go to the Olympics as a gymnast. That's something that I can't do. I can't do a front flip, can't do the back flip, remember. But if I read a book about an Olympian, about an Olympic gymnast, I can go to the Olympics and imagine what it'd be like for me to be able to do that front flip without kind of breaking a bone or injuring myself. There are worlds and adventures where I can kind of save the world. I'm not going to save the world from my bedroom. I'm very risk adverse. I like to stay safe and sound in my bedroom. I don't like any trouble. So I can't really go out and save the world properly like a proper undercover spy. But if I read a good book where a spy's gone out and saved the world, I can feel like I'm doing it as well. They can inspire and encourage you in more ways than you can imagine. There are so many books that have inspired me to do so many things in my life, including writing books. We'll talk about some of the books I love in a moment, but there's definitely some books that have really inspired me to become a better storyteller and a better author. There are books that have inspired me to go to places I maybe wouldn't have gone to before, and just to open up my eyes to worlds and experiences around me that I maybe wouldn't have got to experience otherwise. And the last thing on that slide is it just makes you feel seen and understand the world around you a little bit better. When I was younger, a lot of the books didn't have characters that looked a lot like me, and I felt a little bit isolated as a result. And so being able to write a book where I can see characters like me on the cover really makes me very happy and proud. And now we're in a very lucky time where there are lots of books out there with lots of different kinds of characters, and hopefully you'll be able to find yourself in those pages too. So some of my favourite books and what I would maybe recommend, you maybe can recognise some of the books on here. Some of the books that I really loved when I was growing up, the Alex Rider series. I know that that's kind of still popular. Sometimes I go into schools and I hear kids are still reading it. So the Alex Rider series was one series that I absolutely loved when I was growing up. Remember when I just said about not being an undercover spy in real life and being able to save the world? Well, when I read Alex Rider, I felt like I was saving the world alongside with him. I felt like it was so much fun, so much adventure. You could go up against really big villains and actually win and save the day. And Alex Rider was maybe the first time where I really wanted to write a story of my own that maybe looked a little bit like Alex Rider. I maybe just made it look a bit too much like Alex Rider when I was younger, but I've got a bit better at writing now, so I can write my own creative stories. I've also got one that's maybe a little bit older for the kids who are watching now, but there was a book called Noughts and Crosses, so when you get a little bit older, you can maybe find that in your school library maybe, but that was one book that made me realise that I really wanted to be an author. The author, Mallory Blackman, I remember looking at her and being like, she's a black author and I'm black and I can be a writer and a storyteller too. And so that was a book that really inspired me to become a writer when I was younger. Now, some of the books that I might recommend to you if you're looking for a good book to sink your teeth into, obviously, I would say The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. But if I wasn't going to recommend one of my own books, then I would maybe recommend some of the ones here. So we've got the Skandar series, Skandar and the Unicorn Thief, a really big adventure one, magical, fantastical. It's got these mythical unicorns that have special powers. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of elemental powers in there. So that's a very fun one to read. We've got The Peculiar Tale of the Tentacle Boy, which is a really whimsical, fantastical story again, set by the sea. So if you're a big sea lover, then maybe that book's for you. And then we also have the Loki, A Bad God's Guide series as well. Now I've included this one specifically because it's very, there's a lot of illustrations in there, and I think it's more of a graphic novel than a prose novel. So it's got much more illustrations in there. And you can read any kind of book. The books that speak to you the most are the ones that are going to make you interested in reading. So if it's one that has lots of illustrations and not as many words, it's more of a comic, that is something that's going to get you reading, then great. That's something that's going to get you into that adventure. And we really, really encourage you to read any kind of book that draws your attention. If it's something that's fantastical and magical, something that's set in this world, whichever draws your attention is the right book for you. Now we've got a little bit of this is flick, there we go. Oh, there we go, there's the one I'm looking for. We've got the right slide. But the book that represents me the most is, I'm gonna be a little bit selfish here and choose my own book. Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow was my very, very first book. It's the first book I ever wrote from start to finish, and it was the first book that I got published and that readers were able to buy. And it's the first time that I ever really got to see a book with a character on the front who looked like me, and I could really see my younger self in Archie, who is the main character. Now, you can see some of the pictures up here. I was very, very fortunate when Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow came out because it's a very deeply personal story to me. It talks a lot about a relationship with Archie's relationship with his dad, and it made me kind of look at my own relationship with my own dad and look at my own life and kind of be proud of what I've been able to do with this book. So you can see here it's been in the newspapers, there's some fun stickers there, some holographic stickers. I still have some of those floating around my house. I've kind of put one on my laptop just to kind of remind me that I wrote the book. The second picture along here, remember I said about that big box that publishers send you? Well, that one there is when I got the box of Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, and I put them all up on the shelf behind me to take a lovely picture. And then the one furthest along on the right-hand side there, that was when I signed a lot of copies in a bookshop. They managed to have a couple of hundred copies, I think. There were so many that I could build a big wall of the books. It was a lot of fun. I managed to do that one. So I was very, very happy with that. And as I said, very, very proud of that. And it includes all of my favorite things. It includes friendship, a bit of adventure, and pride. Pride's one of my favorite places to go in the world during the year. So I really, really was happy that I got to put those into that book. And if I pick this one up here, this is one of my copies that I have at home. And it's a special copy because I'm not sure if you can see it here, but it's got some really, really fun spreads, some sprayed edges, some really fun, colourful ones. Looks like a little rainbow. This one actually came to me because I won an award for the book, which is I'm very, very proud to have been able to do that. And one of my prizes was this very special edition of the book. So I'm very, very happy. It takes pride of place on my bookshelf. But it's a very, very fun copy of the book that I'm very happy to have had. Pop that one back down there. So, The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, that's one of my latest books, and it's a little bit different from my first ones. It's more of a sci-fi fantasy story, and it's set in a world that's very similar to ours. So if you look around you, the world that we live in, that's kind of where this book is set, but there's a slight difference. In this world, in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, there is, when shooting stars escape, they rip open the sky, and when they rip open the sky, there are these monsters that we call demons that fall through the shooting stars down to Earth, where they are hunted. Now, on Earth, we have hunters who are, it's their job to protect us at all costs. They want to protect humans from these monsters because these monsters are meant to be bloodthirsty. They're meant to be kind of really dangerous creatures that could cause us harm. So it's the hunter's job to kind of keep us safe down on Earth. Now, The Boy Who Fell from the Sky has a main character called Zediah Smith. His nickname is Zed, and he's our main character. He's 12 years old, and he wants to be just like his dad when he grows up. Now, his dad is one of the most famous hunters there has ever been. And right at this moment when the book starts, he's the best hunter in the world. He's really good at finding these demons, catching them, and eliminating them. And Zed wants to be just like him. He wants to follow in his footsteps and be the best hunter the world's ever seen. But he's not really doing a good job of it so far. He's a little bit clumsy, he's not very organised, he's not very coordinated, and he's a little bit scared. He's scared of these demons because he's heard so much about these monsters, and he thinks that they will maybe cause him harm, they can hurt him, so he's really scared and he's really worried that he's not as brave as his dad is. But then one night, near the very beginning of the book, Zed stumbles across a demon for the very first time. It's the first time he has ever seen a demon in real life. Now, he's heard a lot about these monsters, about how they're bloodthirsty and they will cause great harm to him. But when he finds this demon, he realizes that the demon is actually just a boy who's from another world, and he's fallen into this one, and he's just lost and wants to get back home. And so Zed has a choice to make. Will he help the demon, who he finds out is called Spark? Spark's the name of the demon. Will he help Spark to get back home? Or will he follow in his dad's footsteps to eliminate demons and keep humans safe? So that's the very beginning of The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. It's kind of the pitch of The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. And hopefully, if you've already read it, hopefully you enjoyed it. And maybe if you haven't read it yet, then hopefully you do enjoy it when you get round to it, fingers crossed. So I think we've maybe got time to maybe read from the beginning. So I'll grab this book here. This one here, if you haven't already read it, then this will give you a little taste. It's from the prologue. So it's the very beginning. It's really short. It's just a couple of pages here. So I'll just read it so you've got a little bit of a taste of what the boy Who Fell from the Sky is like. And so our story begins. Not here on Earth, although we'll get there soon, but in a place just out of reach. Here, concealed beyond the sky and hiding within the very stars of the galaxy itself, is a boy. Away from Earth's harm, the boy is safe. But every so often, a shooting star escapes from the gilded cage it's kept in, slipping away from the herders who try to tame it and dashing through the night, ripping open the sky. Through this tear, the world above and below become connected for a brief time until the wound heals into a scar, closing the void once more. It happens every single day all around the globe. Down on Earth, humans hear a thunderous sound as the shooting star escapes. It's a warning. Hunters far and wide assemble, ready to protect Earth from the monsters that will soon fall into our world. And as the star completes its journey, the hunters raise their weapons. Now, a shooting star makes a break for freedom, awakening chaos from its slumber. It moves at a frightening speed, whooshing through the sky as if it's being chased, and soon there's no hope of catching it. The sparks from the star's tail seep into the folds of the night, cutting through the sky like a knife and tearing it apart. It lasts for just a moment, but a moment is enough. The sky begins to split, the hunters take aim, and the boy begins to fall. So that's the very beginning of The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. You might have been able to guess that that is when Spark starts to fall into our world and really gets the story into motion. So I've told you a little bit about my books, a little bit about me, and now hopefully I'm going to hear, well, I'm not going to hear because I can't see you all, but hopefully you guys are going to have some of your creative energies going, and we're going to get some of your ideas down on paper to see if we can kind of get some stories created from you guys. So today we're going to think about creating a main character, but not just any main character. We're going to think about focusing on the villain. So for The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, we have demons. Demons are supposed to be these monsters that we're supposed to be scared of. You know, they thirst for human blood. According to myths, they have black fur and they have sharp teeth and black eyes. Now we know that that's not true. They do just look like Zed does, like we do, just like regular humans. But humans, hunters, the adults have kind of made us believe that these demons are to be feared. And so they've kind of made up that they've got black fur and sharp teeth and black eyes. And even in the movies that they make about demons, they make them have green fur and horns and hooves for feet. So we're kind of told that we should be scared of these monsters. So for the very first box, you should hopefully have a little activity sheet in front of you. For the very first box, I want you to write down as many villainous tropes as you can come up with, as you can think of. So by that, I mean things that we think of as being something that a villain has. So for example, it might be that they always have an evil sidekick. Maybe they've got like a little pet that's quite evil and vicious. Maybe it's a cat that scratches you, or maybe it's a parrot on their shoulder that kind of whispers bad things to them. Maybe it might be something along the lines of they hate children or they want to take over the world. So I want you to think about some of the things that really make a villain, and I want you to write them down in that box. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do that right now. Write them in that little box, write down all the things you can think of, but remember, physical features don't really make a villain. So we can't just be thinking like, oh, our villain has a big nose. I have a slightly big nose, and I would like to say that I'm not a villain. So think more of things like has an evil pet, like I said, maybe they are thirsting for blood, maybe they haunt kids, maybe they hate kids, maybe they're here to wreak havoc on the world around them. So just think about what kind of things your villain might have and jot them down on that piece of paper. While you do that, I'm going to take a quick drink. So just mind, you might hear a gulp from my microphone as I do this. Hopefully you don't. You definitely heard that. Now I don't have a dry throat anymore, so I'll take that one. So hopefully you've got some things written down, maybe the evil sidekick. If they're an evil sidekick, what kind of sidekick? Maybe, like I said, a cat, a parrot. Maybe it's just another human that's also really evil as well. So hopefully you've got some things written down in that box. I'm going to give you another 5 or 10 seconds. Write those down. I hope your brains are ticking by just nicely. Your imagination's going. Be as imaginative and creative as you possibly can be. And now hopefully you've got those down, and we're going to move on to create a character. So when it comes to creating a character, I always start by thinking about how I want my reader to feel. So for Zed, who's our main character in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, I want readers to feel safe when they're with him. I want readers to feel like they've got a friend who's kind of taking them by the hand and leading them through the story. So that was how I wanted people to feel for Zed. But for demons, I want readers to maybe feel a little bit scared at the beginning. I want you to feel a little bit scared of these creatures that are falling from the sky, because you don't know who or what they are or what they can do. And I want readers to be a little bit unsure, maybe a little bit scared and panicked about what to expect, because they don't know what a demon actually looks like in real life. So at least that's what I want you to think to start with for the demons. So now I want you to create a character who appears as a villain in a story of your own. So including some of the things that you've written down in that, maybe in that first box. So for example, it might be an alien, it might be a vampire, it could be a werewolf, it could be a monster that kind of already exists, like a werewolf, for example, in fantasy stories. But you can also just make up your own version of a monster, and we'll give it a name in a moment. So don't think about that too much just yet. But I want you to maybe, you can draw it down in a box. If you're more of a drawer, you can maybe draw them in a little box, draw what you can think of, what you can see when you think of this villain. Or you can write down a short description in the box next to that. You can do both if you want, but I'm just going to give you a short amount of time now to think about that one and get pen to paper and start thinking about this villain. So maybe like I said, maybe it's more of an alien, something that comes from outside of our world, something that's from a completely different world. They might have purple skin. They might have, they might be really, really tall, like I'm really, really tall. But they might be like 12 foot tall, bigger than any human's ever been. They might be more of a ghost. So it might be something that's maybe haunting a house or something. So think a little bit about drawing down this character, or maybe writing down a little description of what this character looks like. Give you just a few moments to do that. Again, I'm going to take a little drink while you're doing that. This is going to be my little drink pausing part. So again, you're maybe going to hear a little gulp as I do it, but hopefully not too loud. I think I managed to do that one a little bit quieter. I'm getting used to doing it now. So hopefully you've started drawing down your character a little bit, started to kind of get the idea down. Maybe think of, well, maybe they've got some fun headgear on. They might have, like, I've got a cap on. They might have a fun hat. They might have a feather in their hat. Maybe they've got a nice cloak on. Maybe they've got a cape. If you're drawing it down, you might want to think about that cape, or maybe they've got a mask on that you can't see their face. If you're writing down a description, then you'll be able to think about maybe writing down a description of what this mask looks like, what the cape looks like. So hopefully, maybe if you're struggling a little bit, maybe talk to the people around you, maybe just nudge your neighbour, see what they're up to. Maybe they've got a good idea down for a good villain. So let me just give you maybe a little explainer of maybe Spark and what he actually looks like in real life. Because like I said, when demons are falling down to earth, people think that they've got black fur and black eyes, and if you get anywhere close to them, that they're going to attack. But in real life, Spark looks just like a boy, but he looks like a fantastical boy. He's got this sparkly skin that kind of sparkles like starlight, and he's got these really sparkly eyes that also look a bit like stars. He's got this kind of white hair, but when he moves, there's different colours in his hair. He maybe looks a little bit cold. Zed always says that he looks cold, but he feels warm. So he looks a little bit cold because of all this kind of sparkly stuff on his skin. So maybe think a little bit about being as creative as you can be. Maybe their shadow doesn't appear on the ground. Maybe they don't have a shadow. Maybe they're only a shadow. Who knows? Be as creative as you can possibly be. Give you a last couple of seconds to do that one. Maybe give you a little countdown from 5, 4, 3. Put your last finishing touches to it. 2, 1, and pens and pencils down. Hopefully you've got either a drawing or a short description, or maybe both. And now we need a name. We need a name for your villain. Now I don't mean like a name like Ben. That's me. You don't need a name like Ben or James or anything like that. We're talking about a name for your villain in general. So for example, the monsters, in quotation marks, the monsters in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, they are called demons. So demons is the name of the villain that I've given to mine. So for yours, like I said, they might be monsters or villains that already exist. So they might be pirates, they might be aliens, they might be ghosts, they might be werewolves, they might be vampires. Or maybe you've created an entirely new villain altogether and you've got to give it a name of your own. So I've put some examples here. So you might have space snakes. They kind of sound a bit scary. I've never wanted to go to space, so space snakes sound absolutely terrifying to me. And sticking on the snake theme, they might be called vipers, or they might be called star worms. I was thinking a little bit about The Boy Who Fell from the Sky and all the shooting stars. Now what happens if those stars had little worms living in them? So maybe they've got like little special powers inside the stars called star worms. They could be called flitters. Maybe they flit from place to place like little birds. Maybe they're really quick. So maybe come up with a creative name that maybe you're going to come up with in your head right now that's not a villain that you've already thought of before. And if you really want to, if you've got some time, I'll give you a few more seconds to think, a few more moments to think about this. But if you've got some time, if you've already written down that they're an alien or a werewolf, or maybe they're a space cowboy, who knows? You can give them an actual name if you really want to. Maybe you want to call them Ted or Sharon, or I've always wanted to call a villain Dave, not entirely sure why. I just think Dave is a really funny name for a villain. Sorry if there's any Daves watching. But I do think Dave's a very funny name for a villain. So maybe give them a quick name to jot down as well, to kind of give your character a name to kind of give them some kind of humanity. So for The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, Spark. There's also another demon, spoiler, called Speck. So Spark and Speck, they're fun names. I quite like those ones. So maybe give them a quick name, give them a character name altogether. Give you a few more moments to jot that one down. Hopefully you've got that down. And now let's flip your villain and reveal the truth. So, something in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky that is not really a spoiler. I think we all know now that that Spark is not really a monster at all. When Zed finally meets Spark, he's not a monster that he's been painted out to be. He's just a lost boy who wants to get back home, and he really needs Zed's help. So you can kind of see Spark there. He's sitting there. He's got his full bodysuit on. He's got his white hair with colours in. He's got his kind of like sparkly, cold-looking skin, but he's not the monster that he's been painted out to be. So let's reveal the truth about the villain that you've created and how they're not quite as they seem. So maybe your villain is actually trying to save humans. Maybe they're trying to do something to give humans a warning that something bad is coming to Earth to really hurt them. So maybe they're not villains at all, but the thing that we think is making them a villain is actually what's making them helpers, or just making them just a little bit different from us. Sometimes I think people can be scared of difference, or they can be unsure of difference. So maybe there's a different element of your character that just maybe humans are a bit uncertain of, and maybe that's just what makes them special and unique. So for Spark, he's got that sparkly skin that I think humans would look at and be like, why has he got sparkly skin? Maybe he's a monster. So maybe think a little bit about how to flip this down. So if you've written down that let's think of an example. If you've written down that your villain is horrible to children and hates children, maybe he's actually just trying to warn the kids that the adults are trying to take over the world and get rid of all the kids. Maybe he's trying to give them a warning, but because he looks scary, the kids think that he's actually a villain. So I'll give you just a quick 2 seconds. You can maybe draw it down again in that box if you really want to, draw an example of how the villain is actually not a villain after all. Or you can write down just a few little sentences and descriptions in the box next to it, and give yourself just a little description of what that character is really like when your character meets them. Give you just a few moments to do that one. Again, I'm going to do my little drink. I'll do a little cheers to the camera again. Hopefully, in my head, that gulp sounds really loud. Hopefully that's not too loud over your classroom speakers. So hopefully you've been thinking a little bit about what your villain's really like. So maybe let's think of another example. If it's a werewolf, then maybe werewolves have a really bad reputation. Maybe people think they're going to bite them and they're going to rip them apart. But maybe this is a tame werewolf, and the werewolf is actually, they don't want to eat humans after all. They're actually really nice, and they just they're like almost regular pet dogs. They're just really nice sidekicks and friends for us to have, but people are hunting them down because they think that they're evil. So write down just quickly what you think that your villain is actually making them into a hero, or just someone who's more friendly than they may seem. Give you just a few more seconds. I can see I always forget that in the illustration for Spark, he's got a little smiley face on his hoodie. That's mostly because when I always wear hoodies. I'm known for wearing hoodies quite a lot. And so when I spoke to the illustrator, I asked if we could put Zed in a little hoodie and if we could put a little smiley face on it, because I thought that was really cute. And I also want to get my own hoodie that's got a little smiley face on it. So maybe your character's got a hoodie on. Maybe he's got a cap on like me. I always wear a cap and a hoodie. That's always what I like to wear. The one thing about me that I don't wear is I don't wear blue jeans. So me and Zed are different in that way. People do like to ask if me and Zed are the same kind of person, but we're not. So hopefully you've got those written down. Hopefully you've got maybe a little drawing, maybe show your neighbour if you're really proud of it. Maybe you've got a little description. And we'll flip through to this next part here, which is the extended writing challenge. Now, the extended writing challenge is not something that you need to do right now. It's something that you can take away. But what I want you to do is think about the villain and the character that you've created. So this villain who's not really a villain, and write a little bit about that story. So think about a scene where your main character meets the villain for the very first time and realizes they're not so scary after all. So in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, there's a moment where Zed meets Spark for the first time, and he's really worried and he's a bit hesitant to begin with. but he starts to realise that maybe Spark is not as evil as he's been made out to believe. So think about this scene where your main character is going to bump into this villain for the very first time. So maybe think about how your narrator is going to feel when they first see the villain. When they first see that villain, they're maybe going to be a little bit unsure, maybe they're going to be a little bit scared, a little bit anxious, and start to think about maybe how you would feel if you bumped into this villain that you've been writing. So if you bumped into a werewolf or an alien or a vampire or one of those weird star worms, how are you going to feel when you see that? You're going to be scared. If it's a star worm, I can imagine I would maybe jump up on the sofa. If it's slithering around on the floor, I don't think I'd like to see something slithering around on the floor. It'd make me scared. So think about how your main character is going to feel to begin with, and then maybe think a little bit about how that first impression was wrong, and how when they actually get to know the villain that they've bumped into, that the villain is not all that they seem, and maybe start to write a little bit about how they start to become friends. So if you need some inspiration, you can go to the extract. I believe there's an extract you've got in your classrooms, I hope. And you've also got the books there as well. But there should be a little extract that you've got in your classroom where Zed meets Spark for the very first time. And so hopefully you can use that as a little bit of inspiration to have some fun creating stories of your own. So fingers crossed that you have fun using this kind of template that you've got to do your own writing challenge and to write a scene of your own. And hopefully you really enjoy doing it. Writing stories is a lot of fun. Hopefully you didn't just hear my belly rumble there. It's almost like it's time for lunch. But yeah, hopefully you really, really enjoy writing those extended little pieces. And yeah, maybe you want to turn it into a full story. That would be really, really cool if you did. That'd be really, really fun. I'm sure you've got some really great villains there to work with. So after all of that, we've reached the favourite part of the presentation. It's always my favourite part, where we think about the questions that you guys have sent in. I've got some questions here in a bowl next to me. I don't know if you can see them here. I've got some here that I'm going to pick out at random. Hopefully, I think some of you have been sending in some questions, so they should be in this bowl here. So I might shout out your school next. I'll try and say your school's names. Let's pick a fun one here. Let's go for this one first. Let's have a look here. So this question is from, I'm not sure if it's AMSI or AMSI in Islington. So if you're watching, hello. And the question is there going to be a sequel to The Boy Who Fell from the Sky? So if you've already read it, then you might know that it ends on a little bit of an open ending to the book. There may be a sequel in the future. I'm not thinking about it just yet, but fingers crossed I get to return to this world, because I really enjoyed writing Zed and Spark and their friendship. And there's some unanswered questions that we maybe need to get answered. So fingers crossed, hopefully at some point we can return to this world and we can see what Zed and Spark are up to now. I would really like that. But in the meantime, what you could do is you can maybe write what you think happens next. If you want to think about what you think happens afterwards, you can write your own little mini version of what you think happens next. That's always a really fun way that I used to do when I was a kid. If a book ended and I wanted to know what happened next and I couldn't wait, I would write down what I wanted to happen next to kind of put my own self in there. So you're always welcome to do that. I'll put this one down here so I don't pick it out again. Let's go with this one over here. Let's have a look. Right, this one is from Hillyfield Primary School, Kama Class. Kama Class, hello, if you're watching, I'll give you a wave. This question says, how many drafts did it take for you to write The Boy Who Fell from the Sky? Very good question. There were a handful of drafts. I would say maybe there were about 5 or 6. So what tends to happen is I write the first draft, which is the big draft. It's probably got loads of mistakes in. There's probably some things that need to be changed up and polished up just to kind of make them a little bit better. So once you hand that draft in, you kind of do your second draft, where your editor, so my editor who works for my publisher, they read the story and they tell me what they think can change and what could be better, and I kind of take their feedback and I write a new draft. So I'd say we go back and forth a few times, and by the time you've done all of that and you get to the proper book, by the time you get to this, I would say there's been about 4, 5, 6 versions of the story. But sometimes there can be more. There are definitely books I've written before where there have been many more versions. There have been 10, 11 versions of the story. Sometimes really big, crucial things change, and you need to go back and kind of edit the rest of the book. But for The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, it was pretty smooth sailing. So it was a joy to write, because I did really enjoy writing that one. And it was easier than some of my other books. The Secret Sunshine Project, my second book, that was a tough one to write. That took many, many drafts. Let's have a look here. Right, the next question is from Spalding St. Paul's. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Spalding is a little tiny market town, and that is actually where I used to live when I was really young. I was about 6 years old when I moved away from Spalding. My gran still lives in Spalding now, so hello Spalding St. Paul's. You're from my neck of the woods, so hello. Your question is, does it make you disheartened when you have to edit your work? It doesn't make me disheartened. It maybe used to when I first started. When I first started out, I used to feel really nervous about people reading my work. I'm really worried that they wouldn't like it. So when I would get edits back, I would always feel like, oh no, they hate it, they don't like it. And that's not the case. When you get edits back, your editor is just trying to make the story the best possible story it can be. So now I actually love getting edits back. I don't get disheartened at all. I get quite happy when I get the edits back. I get to kind of see what other people think and get a new perspective on the story to hopefully make a story as good as it can be. So without my editors, my books would maybe not be where they are now. So thank you so much to my editors for doing such a great job. Next question here is from Oakbank Academy. Hello, hopefully you're watching. Hello, give you a wave. Your question is, was AI used for any of the writing process or the creation of the cover? No is the short answer. There was no AI used in the writing. I don't use AI to write any of my books. I think that the best tool you have to write a book is your own imagination, because your imagination and creativity is endless. If you think that you can't write a story, I promise you there are a million stories in you that you can tell, and it's all about finding the right one for you. So for me, I never used to be able to write more than the first 2 or 3 chapters of a book. I would get really distracted. There's a little fly trying to fly right near my face. I would get really distracted. I would move on to a new story and I'd never finish. But now I think that I like to pick a good idea that I really like, and it helps me get to the end. But I always love imagining, I always love getting to a point where you feel a little bit trapped. So maybe your characters are in a locked room and you've got to figure out a way that your characters need to escape. I think it's really fun that you get to kind of come up with the problem solve to get them out of that situation and see where they're going to end up next, because there always needs to be some drama in a book. So I'm always very happy to be able to do that myself. And the cover is absolutely great. It's by a illustrator called Paddy O'Donnelly. He is great, Paddy Donnelly. He's so good. And this cover is, I shouldn't have favourites, I shouldn't. But this is maybe my favourite cover I've ever had. It's just so colourful. At the moment I saw it, I fell in love with it. And Paddy is such a talented illustrator and he did such a great job on this. So thank you so much, Paddy. You can even see the shooting star in all the colours. It just makes me so happy whenever I see the cover of this book. So I was very lucky with that. And I'm very happy to say that no AI was used in that. Paddy's just very talented. Right, the next question over here, let's have a look. Right, this is from Frederick Bremer School, I believe. Bremer? Let's say Bremer. Hello, Frederick Bremer School. Your question is, why did you make Zed so different in appearance to his dad? A good question, I've never had this question before. So I think the main reason that they just look so different is because Zed is mixed race like me. So his dad is white and he is mixed race. So they look a little bit different physically, appearance wise. And then there's just some parts to Zed that may be a little bit different from his dad. You know, if you look at your own parents and you kind of compare yourself, you might have different eye colours, you might have different hair colours. So yeah, it's just, I just really enjoyed making Zed look a little bit like me. I sometimes like to make my characters look a little bit like me. And Zed's dad is white, so he's not going to look exactly like Zed, but there's some resemblance there, which is why Zed wants to be like him so much and become a hunter as well. This question right here, let's have a look. Who is this from? Right, Woodcote Primary. Hello, Woodcote Primary. Your question is, why did you choose to write children's books rather than adults? Ooh, good question. I really, really, really love children's books. I think my first love was children's books. I really, really fell in love with reading as a child. I showed you some of the books that I read, Noughts and Crosses, the Alex Rider series, a book that wasn't down there, but Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events. I loved those books when I was growing up. And I just think that kids' books have so much magic to them. There's some just real magic and fantasy to kids' books that I just really, really love. You can be as creative and imaginative as you want, and there's kind of no bounds, because when you're a kid, your imagination just knows no ends. Like the world is open and it's your oyster, and you want to be an astronaut, and you want to have special powers, and you want to go to all corners of the earth. There's just so much fun that you can have with children's books and make them as kind of fun and magical as you want. And I sometimes think adults' books can be a little bit boring, just a little bit. Some of them are really, really great, but I think sometimes as adults we lose the magic of being a kid again. And so sometimes adults' books aren't as magical as children's books are. So it makes them more fun and interesting to write when you can do kids' books. So I always recommend writing kids' books because I love them so much, and hopefully you enjoy reading them. Right, let's have a look in here. Right, I'm picking up this one. Right, this one's come out the surface. Let's have a look. Untangle this one. This one is from Sycamore Academy, Class 6B. Hello. We'll pretend that the B stands for Ben. It probably doesn't, but we'll pretend. Can you give us advice on how to write good stories? Okay, so my very first piece of advice is to pick a story that you are interested in, a story that you really love and want to tell. I think sometimes when I was growing up, I would write books that I felt I had to write because these were the ones that were going to make me, they were going to get published into real books, and they were going to make me lots of money. But actually, if you write a book that you really love, it makes the writing process much easier. It doesn't feel, because writing a book can be hard. Writing a whole book, you know, there's quite a lot of pages in here. It can feel like it's a long process, and you're going to be with this book for a long time. So if it's a book that you personally really enjoy, then that's going to make it much easier. So I always recommend picking a story that you want to read. So The Boy Who Fell from the Sky is absolutely a story that I would have loved to have read when I was 10, 11, 12. I would have loved to have read this story when I was that age, and even now. And so I kind of often just write the stories that I really want to tell. Another tip for writing good stories is to make your characters relatable in some way. They can be fantastical, they can be magical, they can have superpowers, they can be other creatures, they can be dogs, they can be dragons, they can be anything you want them to be. But I think the best characters are characters that we can relate to in one way or another. So it might be feeling nervous when meeting new people, or it might be how they feel, maybe they're a little clumsy. So Zed is not the best at sports and he hates running. I really hate running. And that makes me like Zed a little bit more, because I'm like, oh, you also hate running, so me and you, we could be friends in real life. So always make your characters a little bit more relatable, and don't forget to add a lot of drama. Add obstacles for your characters to get around, because one thing that I think we're guilty of doing sometimes is creating stories where you get to the end and it's been so easy for the character to get what they really want. So a story is often about what a character really wants to do. They have a goal, they have an objective, and it's your job as the writer to put obstacles in their way so it's not easy. Because as readers, we want to feel like there's a chance that they might not do it. They might not succeed. So for Zed in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, there's always the question of, will Zed actually be able to help Spark get back home? Will Spark ever get back home? And there's plenty of obstacles in their way. There's other characters who we don't like so much. There's always good to have characters that you maybe don't like and your readers will hate. That's always a good thing. There's always going to be kind of locked rooms or doors that don't have keys, or maybe you're lost, or maybe there's no way for you to get back up into the sky. There's going to be many obstacles that your characters are going to encounter, so add in as many obstacles as you can, and that always makes a very good story. It makes it very dramatic and makes it very, very fun. Let's pick this one here. This one's on the top. Let's have a look here. This is from Prince of Wales Primary School in Enfield. Hello. Somewhere not too far from where we are now. Actually, it's the opposite side of London, but we're all in the same city. Who is your favourite storybook villain? Ooh. I'm going to say, I've just mentioned Lemony Snicket. I'm going to say, is his name Count Olaf? I think it is. I'm going to say Count Olaf from A Series of Unfortunate Events. I think that story and that series is so much fun. I think it stood up really, really well. I love the way it's written. It's written in a way that feels like the narrator of the story is talking to you. And I think that makes a really good book, which is kind of the inspiration for how I write my books. I always want my readers to feel like my characters are talking directly to you. But Count Olaf is a really great villain. He's always kind of doing evil things and always scheming in some way to get what he wants. And I think he's a really, really good villain, and also played very well in the movie by Jim Carrey. So yeah, very, very good storybook villain. Let's pick this one here. Oh, this one's a big one. Let's turn it from around here. This is from Wimpole Primary School. Hello, Wimpole Primary School. And your question is, which character do you empathise with the most in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky? Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. The character I most empathise with is Zed, I think. It feels like a cop-out to pick my main character, but Zed, I feel, has maybe the biggest conflict to deal with in the book, because he really wants to make his dad proud. It's just him and his dad. His mum unfortunately passed away when he was much younger, and his mum's been missing for a very, very long time and from his life. And so it's just him and his dad. And I find it really interesting with Zed that he really wants to make his dad proud, but at the same time, he kind of isn't believing anymore what his dad tells him about these demons, because he's met a demon for himself, and he's met Spark, and Spark isn't anything like the monster he's been told to fear. So the conflict is to believe what his dad tells him and to continue trying to make his dad proud, or to kind of almost do the right thing and help a lost boy get back home. So I think Zed is the person I empathise with the most, because he's got such a decision to make. And I just have a real soft spot for all of my main characters, but Zed is, yeah, I'm going to say Zed. I think Zed's the answer to that question. I'll leave it on there. Right, next up we have Loxwood Primary School. Hello, Loxwood Primary School. Give you a wave. What is the best time of day for you to write? Okay, good question. My favourite time of day to write is, there's a real sweet spot for me, which is just after lunchtime. I'm going to say maybe like 1 o'clock. That's a real specific time. But like 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. is like a real good sweet spot. Now, that's not to say that I don't work either side of those hours. I obviously work more hours than just the two. But in the morning, I'm not the best morning person. I wake up quite early, but it takes me a while to get going. I need a cup of tea or a coffee. I need breakfast. I need to wake up. I do my crosswords in the morning to get my brain awake. So the morning's out, and I'm not really a night owl when it comes to writing. I've written some of my stories late at night, very late at night. But I don't think I get my best work done late at night. So I think I get quite sleepy. I want to get in bed. I want to watch a movie. I want to read my books. So I'd say that sweet spot in the afternoon is my best time to write books. But finding the time, I've got friends who write in the middle of the night, friends who write at like 2 a.m. under the blankets writing away. And I've got friends who wake up at like 6 a.m. in the morning and start writing straight away. So really it's whatever time works for you. But for me, that early afternoon slot is pretty key for me. Right, let's have a look here. The next question is from Hillyfield Primary School Academy. I'm not sure if I just said Hillyfield Primary Academy, but this is from Senate Class. Hello, Senate Class. Where did the idea from The Boy Who Fell from the Sky come from? So the idea came from, this is going to sound really silly, but it came from do we all know Billie Eilish? We all have listened to a Billie Eilish song, maybe. Billie Eilish has a song where she mentioned, where she had a video and it was like a fallen angel falling down to earth, and she's got these really big wings. And I thought it was a really cool image. And I started to think a little bit about Lucifers and demons. And I knew I wanted to make a villain that was called a demon, but then I started to wonder what it would be like if a demon wasn't actually the villain that they're supposed to be. When we think of the word demons, we think of like little devils and villains, and I really wanted to flip that on its head a little bit. So I started to figure out, I was like, okay, so what would happen if these demons aren't villains? And demons slash devils are kind of known to come up from hell or underground. And I was like, okay, well, what if we flip that and they actually fell from the sky? And I was like, okay, so how do they fall from the sky? And I started thinking about shooting stars. I actually went to the planetarium for some research for this book before I started writing. And it was really fun to be able to kind of, you lay back in these chairs and you look up at the ceiling and you can see all the star constellations. And I find stars really mesmerizing. And it kind of got my brain whirring a little bit and thinking about how I could incorporate these stars into the book. And I decided, well, what if we were scared of shooting stars? Because we never really see them. I've only ever seen one shooting star in my life, I think. And I was like, well, what happens if a shooting star was a sign of danger? If it's got a really loud rumble, and when you hear it, you know you should be scared. So those were the starting points, and I started to mesh them all together. And yeah, we got The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. So that was kind of where the idea came from. Thank you for that question, Senate class. Thank you very much. Put that one there. Right, we're down to the last few questions. I wonder if I can get through them all before we finish. This is from Emmanuel St. Andrew Primary School, I believe. And it says, were you always good at writing? No, I wasn't. I was about to say yes, but no, I wasn't. I used to just write description. So I would write a lot about what a place looked like or what a person looked like. My favorite thing to write about, the weather. I would always love to talk about the sky, the clouds, the night sky, the stars. And they are lovely to write about, but I would write about these for pages. And that's not a story, that's just description. So writing my very first book, Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, was the first time where I ever had to think about actually moving the story along and actually making the story. So I had to think about what actually happens, and I can't just write fun descriptions about the colours and using metaphors to make nice writing. So I haven't always been good at writing. I'm still learning. I think you're always learning. So even though I'm an adult now, I'm 30. I know to some of you in the class it's going to feel very old, which makes me feel old. But yeah, I'm always learning. Even now when I write new books, I get better and better, I hope, as I write books. So hopefully you write more and you get better as well. Right, we're down to the last three, maybe the last one. I'm not sure if we've got time for three more. This one is from Copthorne Primary School. What or who has had the biggest impact on your writing career? I think the biggest impact on my writing career is probably Mallory Blackman, who wrote Noughts and Crosses. Again, that book's slightly older for you guys, but when you get to the YA age, that's a very, very good book. But it was the first time where I ever realised that I could write a book, I could possibly write a story, and here I am today, and I don't think I'd be here without Mallory Blackman. So I'll do that one there. Unfortunately, that's all the questions we've got time for, but thank you so much for coming. I also want to give a big thank you so much to Enterprise Mobility, who gave BookTrust charity the money to bring you author visits all year. There is also going to be an amazing prize for you to win for your school, so watch this space. Thank you guys so much for being with me for the last hour, talking about The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, answering some of your questions, and hopefully writing villains of your own. I hope you've really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to hopefully hear more about your villains. I'm really looking forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your school day, and thank you so much for being with me. Goodbye. See you later.